Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Azmi bin Abdul Sheikh Daud Munaf, ID number 21B0829. Today I'm going to present you the topic about the history of human-made law. Of what I've just researched is actually mentioning about the civil law and also the common law. Okay, the history of the Western Europe, of the country who received the legal system that spread throughout the world. So it goes back to it goes back thousands of years ago, during in the 14th century to the 18th century. It followed by a bunch of the intelligence jurists to obtain the explanation throughout the world. So the Romanian who created this civil law and was modified back then from the British to England, that called the common law. So the historian says that in between those two were actually have the same different path views. So this is the education of the first war of the overall world. So in the 1900s, the third war were actually almost reached to the developments of the human-made law, but unfortunately during the World War II years, it could not escape from the many crises, and it became partial collapse and retreat. It was abandoned within like 6 years ago. So during the 1990s, the development one had run its course, and all hopes are now exhausted and grown obsolete due to the West countryside that prevent them to become more popular. So after this, I'm going to show you the visualization through the map. As you can see here, the first war was actually the green color, and the second war is actually the yellow color, and the third is the red color. So I'm gonna discuss in between the first war and also the third war. So the first war, where the Romanian who actually released the civil law, and it has actually modified by the British, the England, that called the common law. So the Romanian were actually located near here. I think it's near the Arab. So when I zoom in, it shows like this. The view is like this. Okay, now the civil law actually came from the word Latin, the word jus civile, from the Romanian designated law. The word gives originated to enjoy. So the reference of this Roman law can be respected in the light of nature, of its enhancement along with the historical and social developments during at least like 1,000 years ago. So it includes the minor of highly skilled jurists. From the point of the view, often obtain the clarification and also the guidance. In the kind of they serve, not only has a technical translated of written text, yet their powerful knowledge and intelligence also become the elements of the development of the law. So the Emperor of Justinian brought together with other extraordinary jurists to combine the body of the law. So the Roman law has the highest reputation when the several politics of unifications and Western Europe led to join with the private law of international mechanism of codification, particularly in France and also the Germany. So the absolute of the lawmaking codification can determine the nature of the legal system, which there were the declarations. Okay, now moving to the common law. As I mentioned earlier, this legal system was associated its origin in England, where the political, the social, and also the economic and foundation of law from the old-fashioned system. Surprisingly, one of the aspects of the system, each region is performed individually without the knowledge of what the surroundings were doing. So when the king of the Curia Regis looked to establish the importance of the central power, He immediately discharged his responsibility in continuation of the peace. And then, finally, he published his own court of the law that followed with the jurists and the scholar who went circuits throughout the country. So the king has created the first uniform rules of the basis of legal order, which generally norms throughout the whole country. So the England took place historically much earlier than the advancement of the parliaments. Now we are moving to the third world. As I mentioned earlier, it's the first world. Now it's the third world. The development has meant the correlating with the explosion of the international legal institution of the new problems to deal for the third world. But perhaps the development could not escape from any crisis, with the partial collapse and retreat because of during the World War II. Until around at least 1960s, the development enjoyed some of the validity and also the controllability due to its alliance with the international politics that support with their evolution agendas. But unfortunately, the Western has the tool containing resistance from the countryside, preventing the third world to become more populist and also communist. So the historical condition which launched into the idea of becoming well-known has vanished. So in the early 1990s, the development had run its course and to make it steady has grown obsolete. Surprisingly, the objection of the Southeast Asia includes China. As I mentioned, that China is the second world, but many historians say that China includes the third world, and also the India itself has achieved the impressive results within the wealth creation, poverty reduction, and also the enhancement in the standard of living. Furthermore, it also clearly violates most of the recommendation of the development expert and the foundations through the form of the public and private organization in between the firms and also the government. So the international law has not depend on the traditional with the developments. Well, perhaps they focus in terms of the man-made law of the formalization, the informal assets, the publication of the independent judicial system, which is part of the standard collection of legal chances, which recommended through the law and the improvement of the initiatives. Okay, now as you can see here, there is 4 different types of color. The first color is the civil law. The civil law is the blue color that made by the Roman. And the second is the red color. The red color is the common law made by the British. So we in the Borneo, this part, we actually follow with the British common law. And for the brown color, mix between civil and common. And then lastly, the orange color, it's the Islamic law. Okay, now we are moving to the conclusion. So the civil and also the common law has from the opposite extremes, but it sometimes can be said that the movement is no longer much different. So each system has its strong characteristic and a definite of comprehensive nature of individuality. So it displays its ability to desire of a social and economic needs of the society in constant change. So the evolution cannot disconnect from its own characteristic. It should go along to the future until can be modified with certain problems in the future. Sadly, for the third world, it felt with disappointments that the West country prevent them to become more populist and also communist. But until one day, the objection to the failure of the development of the records through some part of the third world has achieved drastically impressive result, and it was back with the success of the improvement in the standard of living. That is all for my presentation of this topic of the history of human-made law. So I'm ending with saying wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you for listening and watching, and have a great day. Stay safe and stay strong.